We've been going through 1 Peter, section by section. I don't get to pick and choose what I'm going to talk about. When you go section by section, you can't skip and go places you want to go. You have to hit every topic. And that's what I like about going through the scriptures this way. Oftentimes somebody will call me on the phone or they'll email me and say, hey, what are you going to be preaching on this Sunday? I'm thinking for years and years I've been going section by section, so it's going to be the next section. And what I'm trying to do by going section by section is to present God's message through Peter. What was he trying to get across to us? And here these people are considered aliens and strangers. They're not at home. They are going home. But while they're here on earth, there's a certain way that they have to think. There's a certain mindset they should have. And there's a certain way that they should behave. And so Peter presents that to him. And I'm going to be in 1 Peter chapter 2, beginning in verse 13 this morning. If you have your Bibles, you can follow 1 Peter chapter 2, beginning in verse 13. Submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. For such is the will of God, that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Act as free men, and do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bondslaves of God. Honor all people. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. As I meditated on this, I thought, how timely. I mean, how relevant is that for us today? It's as if Peter could have written that last night. And it's so practical. The Bible is not an ancient book. It reminds me, it is not an ancient book. It is a living book. It is alive today. It is living and speaking to us right now. If this was practiced, if this text was practiced, how much of the turmoil and the constant friction that we seem to see here today would be solved. It's a powerful message. It's one of the hardest messages in the Bible to preach. It is the message of submission. And it begs the question, will I humble myself enough to submit? To submit. Submission. That's a dirty word for us. That is a negative connotation. We don't submit to anybody because the connotation is that we're quitters. That we're a loser. The people who are submitting are losers. The MMA, they put somebody in a submission hold and make the other guy submit. They make him quit. He's lost. And we are fighters. We are not quitters. We don't submit for anyone. I mean, you disagree with me, and the fight is on. I'm not going to back down or give up anything. We live with that image in our mind of George Patton in front of the American flag, saying, America loves to fight. We love winners. We don't love to lose for anyone. And so in our minds, to submit is a negative connotation. And yet in Peter's mind, it means something maybe not as negative, because Peter is going to use it 10 times, around 10 times in 3 chapters right here. And think about submission for just a moment. Jesus submitted to his heavenly Father. I mean, that comes out in all the Gospels, especially the Gospel of John. Jesus submitted to his earthly parents. That really comes out in the book of Luke. Jesus, the incarnate Son of God, was a submissive man. He submitted to the governing authorities. And so, why is it so hard for us to submit? Submission for the purpose of reaching our culture with the gospel of Christ. For the Lord's sake, not for Ron's sake or for America's sake or for our party's sake, but for the Lord's sake. Well, you know what? I know submission is hard, but I can do that. I can submit for God. I can do it for Him. And he says, so submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, to kings and the governors. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm submitting to the government from the top down. You want me to submit? Oh, maybe he just didn't understand what government was going to become like in 2,000 years. I mean, authority can be abused. Does he realize that Donald Trump is our president? Does he realize that Kate Brown is our governor? I mean, what is he thinking about here? And then you have to think and stop for a minute. When Peter's writing to Christians, Claudius was their king. Nero was their king. They had governors like Pilate and Festus. I mean, we get so involved and caught up in the hair-pulling politics of our day that we forget that the governments have never been righteous governments. We live in a fallen world, and all governments are fallen governments. There is no Christian party. There's no Christian government, but there are bad people keeping bad people under control. Some are more proud of the fact that they're conservative or liberal or Republican or Democrat than they are that they're a Christian. And if there's any reason why some of you should walk away from Christianity, it might be right here, because he's asking us to submit to the government. I mean, how can he ask us to do that? It's hard to submit to anybody because, well, the bottom line is we're smarter than all of them. We're smarter than everyone. We're smarter than our boss. I mean, what was he thinking? I mean, he needs to put somebody in charge who understands what's going on. Like me. We're smarter than the president, that's for sure. We're smarter than this governor, that's for sure. What were the Republicans thinking? What are the Democrats thinking? What are these other folks thinking? We're smarter than the elders. What's up with the elders? What's going on there? I mean, if they had some common sense, they need to stand up to all what's going on here. I read these points on Facebook, or you see a TV commentator, or wherever it might be, and you get the idea that in their mind, all the intelligence and wisdom of the universe has come down to that one spot in their mind. Submit? Why should I submit to anybody? Our pride, it's in our DNA as Americans. We are sons and daughters of the revolution. I mean, submit, we don't submit to anyone. We haven't had a king since 1776. Don't tread on me. But the problem even goes back further than that. We are sons and daughters of Adam. And he was a rebel. And so am I. It is hard to submit. You start talking about submission, and that little lawyer in your brain starts to talk. That little lawyer says, I object. And we start looking for a loophole. You know, this might work for some people some of the time, but it's not the right thing right now. This is not a good idea. And we object. That little lawyer comes up and says, don't listen to them. Don't listen to your boss. Don't listen to your teacher. Don't listen to the elders. Don't listen to the governor. Don't listen to the president. You're wiser and you're more insightful than any of them. That's what that little lawyer is saying. You know, when I was a teenager, my cousin was a highway patrolman down in California. And as kids, we would go visit my cousin, and it was difficult to go ride with him anywhere, because the first thing he did when we got in the car was make us all put on our seatbelts. And we weren't used to wearing seatbelts. Now, this might shock some of you young people, but seatbelts weren't a common thing when I was a kid. I mean, they weren't even offered in a lot of cars till about 1968. My 57 Chevy did not have seat belts. I mean, we put them in later on, aftermarket. But he always make us put those on. You know why? Because he had been to so many accidents and he saw so much death and so much injury caused by not wearing those. He would get this Highway Patrol magazine. I would thumb through those sometimes. And man, they had these horrific accidents pictured there. You'd see scenes of such carnage and the need for seat belts. And so finally, the government starts saying, we need to wear our seatbelts. It's a safety issue. We should wear our seatbelts. And you know, that little lawyer in our brain said, oh no, that might work for some people. That work for... My aunt was wearing a seatbelt. It cut her right in two when she got in an accident. Might be hard for you young folks to realize I didn't wear a seatbelt until I was in my 20s. My seatbelt when I was a kid was my mom's arm coming across to keep me from going through the windshield. We didn't do that because we had this little lawyer. Not till I was in my 30s did they finally make it mandatory that we wear seatbelts. I mean, we're just not going to be told by anyone what to do. Wear a mask. That little lawyer says, oh no, man. I'll tell you what's wrong with that. It's good, but we're the exception here. Because we are smarter, brighter, more insightful than all the scientists and all the doctors combined. Well, it doesn't work for everybody. It only works 85% of the time. Well, that's better than nothing. That doesn't work for... The little lawyer says, I object. You don't wear it for yourself anyway. You wear it for other people, to honor them, to respect them. But there's so many examples of this. Sometimes there is a time to speak out. In Acts the 4th chapter, we can see civil disobedience there. I'm going to serve God rather than man. But most of the time, we're only serving our little lawyer. And, you think, why are you so passionate about this? It's because I too have that little lawyer. And is he smart? Does he have my best interest at heart? No, because he is a rebel, and so am I. Do what's right, he says. Be subject, that you might silence the ignorance of foolish people. Jesus was brought before Pilate, and he was silent. And he came in a submissive posture. He could have called, we sing 10,000 angels, he could have called myriads of angels to his assistance, but he didn't. And what does Pilate say after he examines Jesus? I find no fault in him. And Paul is brought before Agrippa, and then before Festus. And what do they say? This man has done nothing worthy of death. They are silenced because they see the submission and they see the respect they have. Honor. Honor, it's a matter of respect. It's a matter of priority. It's a matter of putting other people first. It's for the sake of the gospel. And so he says, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake, to every human institution, whether to kings or as one in authority, or to governors as one sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and praise for those who do what is right. Verse 16, act as free men. Now, if you look in the margin, or look in the text there, act. The word act is in italics, which means it's not there. It may be implied, but he just says, as free men. We are free men. Don't use your freedom for covering evil. And that's our claim, isn't it? We are free people. We don't have to submit to anyone. And yet, that's what he's trying to get to us to realize, is that even as free people, for the sake of those who are not yet Christians, we should submit. 1 Corinthians, the 8th chapter, the 10th chapter, Paul is writing to these Christians to tell them, well, now that you're a Christian, here's how you should act. And now that they had this freedom, they could do whatever they want. They weren't prohibited by any of the don'ts that people put on the New Testament. Don't tell me what I can do. And now what he says is, well, wait a minute, be careful. In chapter 8, verse 9, but take care that this freedom of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. In chapter 9, verse 1, am I not free? Am I not an apostle? Have I not seen the Lord Jesus? I mean, you come down to verse 19. For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a slave to all, so that I might win more. In verse 22, to the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that I might by all means save some. The bottom line for Paul is to save some. You go to chapter 10 and verse 31. Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. Give no offense either to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of the many, so that they may be saved. I mean, Paul has been talking about eating food offered to idols. We know there's no such thing as an idol, so there's nothing wrong with this food presented to an idol. And so he says, if you're invited to somebody's house and they put food before you, just eat whatever is put before you with thanksgiving. And don't worry about where it came from. But if your host says, this was sacrificed to an idol, don't eat it. Because there's something going on in the host mind that he thinks maybe there's something wrong with eating this. We think, well, we're free. We don't have to be told not to eat this. We're not being told by the government or everybody else what we can or cannot do. Yes, but as free men, we should be able to humble ourselves enough to realize that we've become a stumbling block to a lot of folks. In the book of Galatians, in chapter 5, very powerful verse here, in my mind anyway, in verse 13. For you were called to freedom, brethren. Only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Submit. Oh my goodness, this is such a hard thing to do. Honor. He says, honor all people. All. That is pretty inclusive. Honor means to respect, priority, putting others first. It's an amazing thing in the 10 Commandments. The 5th commandment is honor your father and mother. Why in the world would anybody have to command you to honor your father and your mother? It just seems like it just seems like common sense. It just seems like a matter of respect. Sometimes we think we're smarter than them. And the little lawyer says, you don't have to respect them. You don't have to do that. But all. How about black people and Hispanic people? How about police? How about business owners? How about the person has different facial features or speaks with an accent? Or that rich property owner, that fat cat down there? What about the Muslim or the Catholic or the Baptist or the Protestant? Oh, whosoever. Honor all men. Love the brotherhood. Now, that's rough. You think that'd be easy, but love the brotherhood is hard because the church is made up exclusively of sinners. I had a teacher at school, he said when it said love the brotherhood, it meant you have to love the brothers, but you also had to love a few hoods. It's not always easy. Fear God. Honor the king. That may be a reflection of Proverbs 24:21. We're going through Proverbs right now. Honor or fear God. Fear God. Oh, it's easy to fear God because he could squash me like a bug. He can judge me and condemn me. You ever been in that place where you think, well, as soon as I step out of line, God's going to smack me. I'm saved now, but I'll do something wrong and then I'm lost and I can ask God to forgive me and then I'm saved and then I'm lost. Oh, what a terrible thing to go through. I was once that way. I feared God. I was worried about God. And then I had to grow and I had to mature and understand the great love and grace of God. And is God a holy God and is God a judge? Yes. And I do fear God in a respectful way, but I'm not afraid because I know He loves me so much. And I don't want to sin anymore and hurt someone who loves me this much. And so, fear God. Honor the king. It's Nero. It's Nero. He is lighting up Christians in his garden for light. He's putting tar and pitch on them and lighting them on fire. Honor him. You don't respect, you don't honor somebody by constantly ridiculing them and thinking they're fools or idiots. If you think peace can come by a particular political party, then you've misunderstood the Bible somehow. I mean, to look at government in history has been a disaster. And when we think of having all the intellect and all the wisdom of fallen men coming together to lead us and think that's going to get us somewhere, we're mistaken. There will not be peace on earth until not justice comes. I mean, no justice, no peace. And there is a need for justice. Don't get me wrong. But none of it's going to happen until we allow the Prince of Peace to come into our heart and live there. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as to the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. For such is the will of God, that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free men, do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bond slaves of God. Honor all people. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the King. May God bless you.